2 years before the 1962 World Cup, the ground beneath Chile moved with more force than any earthquake ever instrumentally recorded. Whole communities were devastated. Stadium plans collapsed with the cities around them. The sensible decision was obvious. Move the tournament. Chile refused. Then the football arrived. Police entered the field during one of the most violent matches in World Cup history. Pele was injured. The Soviet Union surrendered a 4-goal lead, and one crooked-legged winger became the most irresistible player on earth. How did a country recovering from catastrophe stage a World Cup that swung between brutality and beauty? This is Chile 1962. In 1956, FIFA met in Lisbon to choose the host of the 1962 tournament. Argentina looked like the safer candidate, larger, wealthier, and already a major football power. Chile's campaign was led by Federation President Carlos Ditborn, who argued that the World Cup should not belong only to countries that already had everything. Chile won the vote. Hosting became a national modernization project. New stadiums, improved communications, transport, hotels, and a chance to show that a long, geographically isolated South American nation belonged at the center of world football. The political backdrop made that ambition larger. Latin America was becoming a central arena of the Cold War. The tournament ended in June 1962. 4 months later, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the United States and Soviet Union closer to nuclear conflict than at any other point in the era. In Chile, teams from the Soviet bloc would not be background characters. The Soviet Union arrived as European champion. Czechoslovakia would reach the final. Yugoslavia would reach the semifinal. On May 22, 1960, a magnitude 9.5 earthquake struck southern Chile. It remains the largest earthquake ever instrumentally recorded. The rupture generated a Pacific-wide tsunami and caused catastrophic damage across the country. World Cup preparation was no longer the country's first emergency. Plans for a broad network of host cities had to be reduced and reorganized. Santiago, Vina del Mar, Rancagua, and distant Arica carried the tournament. Chile was not rebuilding for football instead of rebuilding lives. It was trying to do both, under financial pressure and international doubt. Ditborn pushed the project forward but died weeks before kickoff. He never saw the opening match. The stadium in Arica carried his name, turning one venue into a memorial for the organizer who had treated the tournament as proof of national capacity. On May 30, 1962, the World Cup opened on schedule. 16 teams played 32 matches across 4 cities. The field included defending champion Brazil, West Germany, Italy, England, Spain, Hungary, the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Uruguay, Switzerland, Bulgaria, and Chile. Europe and the Americas still monopolized the finals. No African or Asian team qualified. The format was unforgiving. 4 groups of 4 produced only 8 quarterfinalists. There was no round of 16 and no protected route for famous teams. Spain arrived with Alfredo Di Stefano in the squad, although injury kept him from playing. Hungary brought Florian Albert. The Soviet Union brought Yashin. 6 players would finish tied as leading scorers with 4 goals, a reminder that this tournament never belonged to one attacking system or one country. The football was often tense and physical. Players competed on heavy fields under rules that offered far less protection than modern stars receive. Substitutions were not yet allowed during World Cup matches. An injury could erase a player and leave his team with no tactical replacement. That mattered immediately. Brazil entered as champion with Pele, Garrincha, Didi, Vava, Zagallo, and much of the side that had won in 1958. Pele scored against Mexico. Then, during Brazil's second group match against Czechoslovakia, he suffered a thigh injury. His tournament was over after 2 appearances. Brazil's attempt to defend the title suddenly depended on everyone around its most famous player. The timing could hardly have been worse. Brazil had drawn that match draw nero and still needed a result against Spain. Amarildo replaced Pele, then scored both Brazilian goals in a 2-1 comeback. It was the first proof that this team could absorb the loss of a global icon without asking one substitute to become a copy of him. The tournament's anger detonated on June 2nd when host Chile met Italy in Santiago. The atmosphere had already been poisoned by insulting reports from Italian journalists about Chile and its people. Chilean newspapers answered. By kickoff, a football match had become a referendum on national dignity. The first major confrontation came almost immediately. Italy's Giorgio Farini was dismissed, refused to leave, and had to be removed with police assistance. Punches and kicks followed. Chile's Lionel Sanchez broke Humberto Maschio's nose with a blow the officials did not punish. Italy's Mario David was later sent off. Police repeatedly entered the field. Chile won 2-0 against 9 men. This was not heroic violence. It was officiating failure, retaliation, nationalism, and contempt, feeding one another in front of a global audience. English referee Ken Aston would later help create football's yellow and red card system after another communication crisis at the 1966 World Cup. The cards were introduced in 1970. Chile 1962 was an early warning that the expanding television age needed clearer control. The ugly victory also kept Chile alive. The hosts had opened by coming from behind to beat Switzerland 3-1. After defeating Italy, they lost 2-0 to West Germany, but still advanced. Their tournament had begun with reconstruction as the national story. Now every match carried the additional burden of defending the country's reputation. Yet the same tournament produced wonder. In Arica, the Soviet Union led World Cup newcomer Colombia 4-1. In goal stood Lev Yashin, already regarded as one of football's great keepers. Marcos Coll stepped to the corner. He curled the ball toward goal. It passed the defender at the near post, escaped Yashin, and entered without another touch. An Olympic goal. Colombia surged back to draw 4-4. It remains the only goal scored directly from a corner in men's World Cup history. Colombia did not advance, but the moment survived because World Cups do not remember only champions. Sometimes one impossible action becomes a country's inheritance. Chile did more than survive its own tournament. It became dangerous. After escaping a difficult group, the host faced the Soviet Union in the quarterfinal. Goals from Lionel Sanchez and Eladio Rojas produced a 2-1 victory over the reigning European champion. The reward was a semi-final against Brazil in Santiago. More than 76,000 people filled the Estadio Nacional. Chile had the crowd, the emotional force of the host, and a team playing beyond expectation. Brazil had Garrincha. Garrincha scored with his supposedly weaker left foot, then scored again with his head. Vava added 2. Chile fought back twice, but Brazil won 4-2. Even Garrincha's late dismissal could not turn the crowd against him. Chileans petitioned for him to be allowed into the final. Chile then defeated Yugoslavia 1-0 to finish third, still the country's best World Cup result. Garrincha was called the little bird and the joy of the people. His legs curved in different directions. Conventional coaching logic said his body should limit him. Instead, it made his movement unreadable. With Pele injured, Brazil did not ask Garrincha to imitate him. The team shifted its weight toward the right wing and trusted Garrincha to create disorder. Amarildo replaced Pele and scored twice against Spain to save Brazil in the group. Garrincha then scored twice against England in the quarterfinal and twice against Chile in the semifinal. This was not one superstar carrying 10 passengers. Didi still controlled rhythm. Nilton and Djalma Santos supplied experience. Vava attacked the penalty area. Zagallo balanced the team. Amarildo converted pressure into goals. But Garrincha changed the emotional temperature of every match. Opponents knew where the danger was coming from and still could not stop it. On June 17th, Brazil met Czechoslovakia at the Estadio Nacional. The teams had drawn 0-0 in the group stage. In the final, Josef Masopust put Czechoslovakia ahead after 15 minutes. Czechoslovakia had earned its place through control rather than spectacle. It eliminated Hungary 1-0 in the quarterfinal and defeated Yugoslavia 3-1 in the semifinal. Masopust connected midfield to attack, while goalkeeper William Schroef entered the final as one of the tournament's outstanding performers. This was not a ceremonial opponent waiting for Brazil's coronation. Brazil answered almost immediately. Amarildo attacked from a tight angle and beat goalkeeper William Schroef at his near post. In the second half, Zito headed Brazil in front. Vava added the third after Schroef lost the flight of a high ball in the sun. Brazil won 3-1. Brazil became the third nation to win consecutive World Cups, after Italy in 1934 and 1938. It also became something more important, a champion capable of changing shape without losing identity. Pele's injury could have ended the campaign. Instead, Amarildo emerged, Garrincha expanded, and an experienced team solved a new problem. Chile 1962 is often compressed into two images, the earthquake and the Battle of Santiago. Both matter. Neither is the whole story. The tournament showed how football can turn national recovery into public theater. That can inspire, but it can also place enormous pressure on a host to prove itself to outsiders. Chile delivered the event, reached the semifinal, and converted doubt into pride. It also showed what happens when national humiliation, inflammatory media, weak discipline, and violent play are allowed to reinforce one another. And then there was Garrincha. Pele arrived as the face of the champion. Injury removed him. Garrincha left as the soul of the tournament. The ground moved, the plans broke, the matches boiled over. But the World Cup continued, and Chile's greatest football finish emerged from the same event that many believed the country could no longer host. Football did not erase the disaster. It gave a recovering country a stage on which to be seen as more than its disaster. End visual. Strong media logo watermark remains in the upper right. Fade to black. No quiz appears inside the film.